So on the Leadership Library today, we're going to be looking at leading change, and we're using Noster, a particular program and set of ideas for planning and responding to change. The thing about change is we often think people don't like change, but actually they don't mind it. It's the transition that they find hard. So really planning for that transition is important. And what we're looking to do is move from the current position to the new position and make sure that our transition is successful. So using Noster can help us to plan for those particular areas. Now, when you're looking at an improvement process, the first thing we do is we review what's happening. We will skate over the surface to get an idea what are some of the key issues that are happening. We might then look at particular flow lines through our organisation, and then once we've deduced that, we'll find the particular areas that we want to dig down to see what the issue might be. We'll then evaluate what's working well and what isn't working so well, and then we'll begin to formulate a plan to improve things and put that into action. What I'm going to talk to you about today with Noster is looking particularly at planning for the change and also when you've started to implement it, being able to sense whether the transition is working as part of that process and pick up the issues that are happening, but be able to dial in particularly to the specifics rather than just thinking this change isn't working. So here's Noster's model of complex change. And what Noster says is that actually if you have these 5 areas of a really clear vision, that you are equipping people or people know that they have the skills to manage this transition and this change, that they have the incentive or understand what's in it for them, there are resources to support that, and there's a clear action plan, then you'll get successful change. So as you're beginning to plan through for your change, start first of all of what is the vision. If you make sure you've got these 5 key areas and it starts with, what's my vision? What do I want to happen here? But more importantly, what is my why of the change? What's my reason that sits behind this? And what will the change look like as I go through it? What is it I hope to achieve? And how does the new fit our overall vision of our organisation? So get it really clear yourself, not just what are we doing, but more importantly, why are we doing this? And filter it down so you've got to the really key part. We're doing this because we want to empower you or equip you. Get it down to 1 or 2 simple keywords as part of that process, and so that you're really clear so you can get other people clear. Then think about the skills that people are going to need in this new thing you want them to do. Have the people got the current skills? You might have some that have the skills, and that's great. You might have some have the skills but don't realise they have the skills. So what's important then is helping them understand they've got them. But you might also have some people that don't have the skills to manage this change. So it's really important that you then put things in place to equip people before the change happens so that they have the skills to manage the new way of doing things. And then it's about the incentives. Now, this isn't a case of pay them more to make them do it. It's making sure that you know what's the win for them. You're thinking about the vision you have for this change, and then you think about what is it that floats the boat of the people that you're working with. And for different people, it will be different incentives. And it's making sure that you put this in terms that they understand what's the win for them. And you're looking at what different people have as different wins, and you try and make sure you help them understand by them following this new process the difference it will make to them or to others so that they can buy into it. The next one's resources. What things will they need to do this, and what time will they need to do this well? So resources will come in items, but it's also in making sure that they have the time. Now, with any change you're going through, when you first go through it, it'll take people a little bit longer. So it's making sure that you allow for that, making sure you help people understand when we first start this, it may take us a little bit more, and we're going to give you a bit more time therefore to do it. You might want to arrange some transition time. You might want to arrange some groups that test things out first as part of that process. But you're also making sure they've clearly got the equipment they need. There's nothing worse going into something in a new period of change and you haven't got enough of the items that you need to make this new way of working work. And then lastly, having a really clear action plan about how this is going to flow through. It's thinking about the timescales of when things are going to happen, who's going to be doing what the review points are, what's the money that you're going to allocate to various things. And you really think about the time flow within that as well. You may want to produce something like a Gantt chart which shows who's doing what at certain points, which then impact on things later on. As part of that action plan, you may also want to think about some little tests or trials that you're going to do with certain groups just to check certain things work and to test out and iron out the things that need to just be modified slightly to make it work when you bring the full rollout for everybody. So the first thing is to plan for all of these things. And once you've planned for them and you're beginning to roll them out, Nostr can also help you recognise and have your finger on the pulse of this change to see where it is working and where it isn't. And so that's where this grid comes in for his model of complex change. When you're introducing the change and you're sensing from people, you'll notice on the far side here in purple, it outlines maybe some feelings that people might be having. And so, for example, if you are sensing some anxiety in your team as you begin to roll out this change, you can work your way back on the grid and you can see what is missing is the skills box. Now that could either mean that people, despite your planning, haven't got the skills to lead their way through this change, or they don't think they have the skills and therefore they're panicking. I don't have the skills to do it this way, and they get anxious. So if you see anxiety, then it's the skills area you need to focus in on. If you spot resistance, work your way back and you can see that the incentives box is missing. And so what that is saying to you is people are resisting this because they can't see what's in it for them. So you need to do some work in helping them see the benefit for them in this new way of working. It might not be an immediate benefit, but it's helping them understand the payback they'll get for this for themselves or for those that they care for or have a heart for in the areas that they're leading in. If people are feeling this is just like a treadmill, it's going on forever, you'll see what's missing is the action plan. People aren't clear on the process of when things are going. They don't know when things are happening by when, and it just feels like it's dragging on. So it's making sure that the action plan is clearer, or maybe a simpler one that you bring out so there's a really clear date line so people know what's happening by when. If you spot frustration, it's because they haven't got the resources. And it's then unpicking with people, what element of resources is it? Is it something physical that they're looking for? Is it the time resource that they're frustrated by? And if it's confusion, then it'll be because the vision isn't clear. People aren't really clear for themselves that this is what it means. And you might think, but I had a launch meeting. I thought everyone was clear at the launch meeting. Well, it could be that what you're not doing is drip feeding it so it continues to remain clear. So people are feeling confused because they forgot. Or it could be that the vision was too big and you hadn't refined it enough and it wasn't clear with simple points as part of that vision. So it's about going back and revisiting the vision with people so that they're not confused, so that they can remember again what this was all about. So as you plan your change, you think about these key areas, but equally as the transition is happening, you're trying to sense the temperature of your organisation, looking for those purple elements. And if you spot any of these, look back and see what's the gap, and that gives you the point in which to address things in on. So if you're planning and considering your change, think about what needs to change or improve first of all. Then when you're clear on what it is, it's following these steps. And here are some simple questions for you to think as you plan your change. What is my vision for this change? Not just the what, what's really important is the why. People buy into the reason that sits behind things, the why and the purpose. They don't buy into a what. But make sure it's short and it's clear and that people can remember it. Generally, people can't remember more than 3 things. So try and keep it to less than 3 simple points as your reason for what this sits behind. But think as well about your people that you're working with and put it across in a way that will tie in with their vision and their desire for things as well. Skills. What skills do the people need to be developed for or be reminded of? Think really clearly, if this is going to happen, what are the skills that they need? Incentives. What incentives can I offer them or remind them of? So this isn't about paying them more or giving them a different job title. It's about just helping them understand what's in it for them or for those that they're serving. Resources, what resources are needed, and remember that can be items, it can be people, it can be training, it can be support. What is it that people need to equip them to do this well? An action plan, what things need to be in the action plan is making sure you've got the people listed, the time listed, the cost listed, and you're thinking carefully about what needs to happen first and follows through, so that you're not doing some things and then realise, oh hang on, we need that in place first. So think really clearly about your timeline as part of that process. So when you are working this through, think about what you have in place already and what needs to be developed. So you may already have some skills in place, but then you might have some areas that you need to develop further. You might have some people that can be used as part of that. So think really clearly about what you already have, because it might not be starting completely from scratch as part of this process. And lastly, as you work this through, a bit of a reminder from my book, from chapter 4 about developing others, that particularly if you're looking at skills and developing them, the whole thing about apprenticing others and discipling others in the process, you follow through this process. So it's identifying the people that you can use that can do the doing whilst people watching, and then gradually they get involved in the process. I do, you help, then what moves to is they do and that person helps, and then you do and that person watches until they are now ready to become someone that would apprentice or disciple somebody else. So that approach is particularly useful in both developing others with skills, but also in people taking ownership of the change that you're doing, because some people will really value being asked to be a mentor as part of that process. So Noster's model of complex change: when you plan for your change, think really clearly about your vision that you have for it, keep it short and succinct. Think about the skills that are going to be needed for people to manage the transition and the new way of doing things. Think about the incentives, what's in it for them, and put this across in that way so that they understand and get buy-in. Think about the resources that you'll need, both in physical resources, both in training and processes. And then think about an action plan, clearly step processes so that people know what is happening by when, and so that you make sure that's in time order as well, so that people have the right things in place before the next part comes. So use Noster's model for planning it, but also monitoring. If you see any of these on this far side, you can then pinpoint where you need to put your energy to help the transition of change.